Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Faith with Reasons. Ron Finn along with Shane Stanfield. How you doing, Shane?
Pretty good, Ron. Yourself?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Weather is cooperating so far.
So far, so good.
You never know.
Although I do see a little rain out there.
A little bit, yeah. There's some storms on the way, but it is summertime after all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, Faith with Reasons, as we examine, as the intro just said, our faith and why we believe what we believe, why the church teaches what it teaches. And we always try to find, Shane and I, really quality guests that can help delve deeper into that whole general area. And sometimes, you always look out, for people, and boy, that person would be good to get, that person would be good to get. And you forget to look in your own backyard.
In your own backyard, for sure.
Now, Greg Schlueter is joining us right now. Yeah, everybody's going, oh, Greg's on? I can't believe I don't think we've ever had you on Faith with Reasons, have we?
I'm humbled and honored. I
Wow.
think no two greater people I'd rather be with.
It's interesting because this is show number 543.
And counting.
For Faith with Reasons. And at the beginning, we started on Rugby Drive back in July of 2014. And I want to say it was a couple of weeks or a month or so. It was right around that time that Ignite Radio Live began, also from Rugby Drive there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Great memories from the very beginning. And just
So
the
you guys
persevering faith.
have been on for what, 11 years now?
My wife is the superstar. I'm just the verbose side show. They say behind every good woman.
Yeah, absolutely. There's usually a woman with a sharp stick.
Well, you can ask her children about that.
Yeah,
Indeed.
She doesn't have to use it, does she?
Indeed. Oh, good. She just got the smack. She's
Okay,
got that Polish in her,
Plus, she's got the look.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
We don't have that. Just to tell our audience, in case you're not familiar, of course, you've been listening to Ignite Radio Live, like forever, here on Annunciation Radio, but you may not know of him as an author, speaker, and movement leader who's passionate about restoring faith, family, and culture, in addition to directing communication and marketing for the Institute of American Constitutional Thought and Leadership. He leads Image Trinity, ilovemyfamily.us, a dynamic marriage and family movement, and offers thought-provoking commentary on his blog, which is gregorianrant.us. Have you checked that out yet? So, of course, hosts that alongside his wife, fostering meaningful conversation that inspires transformation. Now, the aforementioned Ignite Radio Live can be heard each and every week at 2 p.m. Saturday and 8 p.m. Sunday, right here on Annunciation Radio. Greg and Stephanie, blessed with 7 children, 1 in heaven, and a growing number of grandchildren. And Greg's written a lot of books. Recent ones include The Magnificent Piglets of Pigletsville. I'll tell you what, that's a coffee table book for me.
Oh, indeed.
I love that. Yep. Also, 12 Roses, and the latest Slaying Giants, and you can check that out, slayinggiants.us. But he's also written an article for Catholic Exchange, which is really kind of what triggered me to reach out to you and say, hey, could you come on the show? Because it's an excellent article, and it's a Catholic Exchange is a great place for articles like this, because you're not limited necessarily by the number of paragraphs you have or anything like that. You can actually dig in a little bit. So,
Indeed.
First of all, welcome to Faith with Reasons.
Thank you so
much.
much.
And I do want to point out I've never been a guest on Ignite Radio Live either. So.
Oh, we'll have to get you on. You and Shane.
I have nothing to offer.
Well, that's the deep, dark questions, the revealing questions. Indeed.
How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing really well. Summer's fabulous. We navigated into grandparenthood 3 years ago with Magdalena, and 2 of our children are married, and all of the activities, 6 kids in 7 years, so now the youngest is 20.
That's amazing.
If they listen to old episodes, they can hear the kids,
oh yeah,
leading the rosary or speaking at different events, going back with their squeaky pre-adolescent voices, and now a lot of them are kind of making their trade, evangelizing using their voices. And so, it's exciting, Ron. It's a journey. It's every day. It's growing together, and home is the context for that to happen. And for us, it is very dynamic. We're blessed to see them. 3 of them are in Columbus. 1 is in Fort Wayne, and they extend our roots as grandparents can do. We are blessed by their growing families and their friendships, and how it just deepens us in these days of ever waning energy. As now I'm navigating into that. The back, not even the back 9, the back 3, back 4 maybe.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, obviously the kids have grown. They look a little different. When I first saw them, you bring them into the station, they'd be little, and sometimes they'd even run the board
That's
for
right.
you and everything
Some are
like
sound
that.
engineers.
Yeah, and you had them on shows before when they were little, which was very fun, very exciting. And obviously they look different now. They're older now. But I don't think you've changed at all. Maybe a
please.
little bit of tinge of gray
That's
up
without
there.
those checks.
I don't know.
I'm already
what
donating
you're
to
doing.
you, Ron, as much as I can. And by the way, you should
plastic
donate to
surgery.
Annunciation Radio.
Okay. No Botox.
No, thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
We're talking just before the show about liturgy. And you mentioned an article right from the Vatican from well, I'll let you explain it, but really the value of the liturgy in its purest form,
Indeed,
kind of goes it takes it right from this article.
Yeah, I think a beginning point actually in writing this as a grandfather, father, neighbor, friend is an observation of how many people are languishing, right? People now more than ever in recorded history are battling with discord. They're battling with depression. It's manifesting itself in quote unquote the best of Christian homes. And I think it's worthwhile if we have the heart of the Father to say, Lord, attune me. Receiving the Eucharist, there's nothing more intimate. Like marriage love, of course, conjugal love. That's just a shadow of the great intimacy we'll have forever. But many are partaking, but they're frustrated because they're not experiencing the flourishing. They're not experiencing the healing and the transformation. And so it's worthy asking the question, why are many good people not experiencing this? And I think an answer is perhaps we're at the banquet table and we're maybe, taking grapes, but we're really not, partaking in the fullest sense. And the liturgy is the answer, right? The liturgy is Christ's presence to us, the one sacrifice. And even though our physical world we have little control over, we do have a lot of control. I don't want to diminish that, but very little. Think about eras in history where there was suffering and captivity, Auschwitz, whatever, horrific things that perplex us. Like, God, why would you allow that? Then you have the likes of saints who would say things like, but I have control over my interior life. Like Christ came and conquered the gates of hell for us to avail to this. And liturgy forms us for our ultimate unsurpassed identity as sons and daughters of God in Jesus Christ. But are we experiencing that? And it's meant to cause us to conform, if you will, to Christ, to our nature. So all that to say, the article has a lot of big words, and we can bone it down in this conversation. I get that. But liturgy is given to us through the generations to more fully participate, approximate, be formed to imitate and glorify God, right? So that article, which I encourage people to read at Catholic Exchange, it begins with my dad, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But okay, so the thesis actually, just yesterday, I got the National Catholic Register. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for that great gift. By the way, a great gift you can give your kids, National Catholic Register. And on page 8, Cardinal Burke, doctrinal and moral corruption, he says, are directly related to abuse in the liturgy. Now, when we speak of doctrinal and moral corruption, I'm speaking of that inner realm of many people who are battling with things. So a few notes from this article, which is pretty pithy. He says, Cardinal Burke says, respect for tradition is nothing less than respect for the ius divinum, which means divine right, he said. It's essential for the right and just relationship between God and his creation, especially man created in the image and likeness of God. And he noted an exaggerated focus on the human aspect of the sacred liturgy. I'll say that again, an exaggerated focus on the human aspect of the sacred liturgy in the post-conciliar period in the past 60 years. The cardinal blamed, and there's a big word, I had to say it a couple times aloud, antinomianism, the belief
That's the way I say it.
The belief that there is no obligation to observe the moral law. Antinomianism, which has spread since 1960s and given rise to, quote, liturgical antinomianism, which he called its most hideous manifestation. He goes on to say, he reminded his audience that the first focus of the Ten Commandments is on divine worship, and that the fundamental principle is ius divinum, is God's right to receive man's worship in the way he commands. If worship offered to God in spirit and truth, which he called God's gift to man, is not honored, then God's law is corrupted for human purposes, he said. Only by observing and honoring God's right to be known, worshipped, and served as he commands, does man find his happiness. I'll say that again, it's powerful. Only by observing and honoring God's right to be known, worshiped, and served as he commands. That's key. Not just as we feel like it, not just our inclinations or subjective sensibilities, all of which have their place and importance, but only in serving God the way, worshiping the way he is revealed and desires, do we find our happiness. There's so much more that could be said here, but it echoes for me, I will say, Dietrich von Hildebrand has a fabulous book he wrote in 1936 called Liturgy and Personality. Makes this thesis. By the way, Father Adam Hertzfeld is an expert on this theme. You should have him in sometime. He gave a seminar, an evening Belief in Beverages presentations at the wonderful Cronin GMC of Perryburg. Everybody go out there and buy a car right now. Anyways, he spoke to our audience, to our group, and he identified this insight that is just plain true, but von Hildebrand, kind of raised a flag for this insight that it's all about right response. It's all about justice, right? It's about right response to truth, to that which is good. And all of life, God, who is the ultimate good, so a right response to him and his created order, happiness derives from that right relationship of a right response to him who is true, to him who is good. And liturgy is given to us to form that, not to say, can I bring in my cup of Java and what moves me with the crescendo of the certain music. And all of that is important, by the way. The music is important. We can't diminish the sensory aspect, absolutely. But what's being noted here in my article is a loss of the sense of I do it, whether I feel like it or not. And William Most, another great theologian, speaks of somatic resonance, like to little kids. Expect them to do things because there's a certain spiritual correspondence that will come about if we observe the right actions and the right gestures. You asked a simple question. You know me well enough. I fire hosed you.
Well, and that's a lot of good stuff, too.
Well, I'm curious. This article by Cardinal Burke, are there examples that he gives typical abuses of liturgy? Because someone may not recognize it. It could be It could be going on every Sunday, and they just don't see it.
So he does not give specific examples. I'm going to venture to say I think many can kind of understand. It's a disrespect. It may be in the way we dress. It's from those who might reduce it and say, God knows my heart. Yep. And God does know our heart, by the way. Let me say this clearly. Matthew 7:21 is a very consequential passage, like John 6, in a sense where Christ is saying, verily, verily, if you want to go to heaven and eternal life, if you don't eat of my body and drink of my blood. Matthew 7:21 is similar, where he says, many will come in my name, saying, look at all these great things we did. We healed the sick, we raised the dead. I'm going to embellish. We prayed our rosaries, we had our novenas, but they'll hear him say, depart from me, I never knew you. That verb, ginosko, is a conjugal verb of to know. It's the same used where Mary says, I do not know man. How is this possible? It's the same verb, ginosko. So I don't want to diminish in this conversation. Absolutely, it is about our interior affection, filial love, but I would say it's revealed in some sense, and Father Carlos Martins, a really great exorcist, speaks of this as a theologian. In the garden is really where it's revealed. Christ is bereft of his emotional experience, right? He didn't go because they offered him free coffee and a crescendo of an amazing Seth Schlueter song. A little plug for my son. They didn't.
And his songs are amazing. By the way.
Thank you. And he gets it all from his mom. Anyways, but the point is that yes, feelings, emotions are there, but we can end up worshiping emotions in the name of God. And so anything corresponding to liturgy, especially the Source and Summit, coming to Mass, where we're not recognizing it's an invitation to bow. And that means time before we even get there, are we praying and orienting our minds and hearts? In the car, as we did, as our kids did, and we'd say, if you guys have things between each other, right? In 15 minutes, you're going to be saying, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive others. And I would be pretty bold. They may be still healing from the authoritarian, monolithic dad who said this. But, you're a fake if you're not apologizing to your brother and sister right now. You're going to be before Christ in that opening part, Kyrie, have mercy on me, entering into the Our Father eventually in the Mass. We want to be authentic before God. So to your question about Cardinal Burke, I think it has to do with our mindset, our heart set, yes. Our clothing, yes. Our disposition and countenance in when we actually come into the church? Are we praying? Are we in a state of preparation? Are we, kind of side talking? And I get it. Every parent knows your kids are different issues or whatever. After Mass, are we, entering into a place of prayer and thanksgiving after we receive the Eucharist? I would even say, again, not being authoritarian, there's, some I think, people need to reflect and ask these questions. Should I be kneeling when I receive the Eucharist? Should I receive in my hand or should I receive in my tongue? I'll say to you, and again, one ought to prayerfully bring up these questions, but at the heart of this is, what does our church ask of us? Not how we feel about it, but does it invite me to bow? And I'll say, personally, it wasn't until 6 years ago, I bless my children for kind of even raising some of these questions. I was receiving on my hand. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't judge anybody here who happens to receive on their hand. And even some bishops may say receive on your hand. So I respect the conversation. But I asked Father Adam, he was our pastor at the time. I said, Father, what is your advice, counsel? He says, well, we really should be receiving on the tongue. And also with regard to the Our Father, the orans, hands in the air. I was doing the hands in the air thing and holding the hands. Again, coming in, my heart trying to be as good as I can. There's growth on this side of things into eternity. But Father said, no, really, you observe what the deacon does. You follow what the deacon does, which is fully in their hands. So I'm just going to confess that for me, age 40-something, it involved a change of habit, not because I agreed that wasn't a factor or felt like it or whatever, in a sense, I saw everybody do. But my pastor, who was a shepherd, and that instantiation of Christ communicated these things to me, and it was an occasion to bow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that sets up, as my article articulates, a certain orientation to God, a response to value, right? Christ is the supreme value. A response to him who is the supreme value in life orients us towards happiness, orients us toward the good. So liturgy forms us with the right disposition and mind and heart toward a truly happy life, ushering us into the life of the Trinity.
Now, I heard once, and it's always stuck, and I don't even recall where I heard it. So it's certainly not from mine, but there is such a thing as right worship.
Absolutely,
and that stuck with me, and and it was deep. It's still very deep to me today because it matters. It's there is a there's the way that we should be worshiping, and yet I'm struck by this because even throughout the Catholic Church, you can go from parish to parish, and you can see so many variations. You can see some people taking this very seriously. You can see some parishes even promoting a very light sense of the Mass. And it's a head scratcher for me because, again, it gets, I think, to the article with Cardinal Burke. It gets to your article as well. There is such thing as right worship, and I do believe if I understand what you read with Cardinal Burke had to say, and what you've also said based on your own article, that there is a sense of this, however it's communicated to us as trying to participate in this, and we may not even be aware of that's going on, but it can affect our internal disposition to what we should be participating in.
100%. And I think to unpack even the etymology of the word worship is helpful. It means to give worth. To give worth. And in that sense, we are worshiping all the time. And it's worth asking the question, right? This is a great lens through which to look at the world, to be forged in holiness. Are my thoughts giving worth to their intended end, which is God? And certainly not that I'm constantly, directly, explicitly thinking of God, but are they forged by the sense, the heartbeat of God? Are my actions then flowing from that? Am I asking with my resources? Like, yippee, I got $2,000 in the mail from Uncle Sam 5 years ago. Is my first thought, what do I want to, spend it on, or even stick it in the bank, or whatever else? Or is it, Lord, you provided something I didn't deserve, and by the way, our lives we don't deserve. They're given to us by God. The first response to value, to the supreme good that is God, is, what do you desire of this? Mm-hmm. What do you intend? This radio station, electricity, this room, people who give money to this, they're giving to something that is of worth, which elevates. And obviously inherent in there is a sense of sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a human reality, as I kind of said. I changed my responses in Mass. Similarly, maybe in my marriage, maybe in my home, I need to be challenged, as I have been. Anybody who's been around for 10 seconds as a dad or grandpa, right? I need to change and question the degree to which I am giving the right worth of my authority, my leadership, my provision, my expensive money, all of that, I think, and so to be attuned to that frequency, faith with frequency, to be attuned to that frequency, I think is the goal, as Burke says, is the key to a happy life. And if we're honest, I mean, I want to be surrounded with people who know this and are unashamed with relational currency to give witness to that, but also to challenge me, certainly by their actions, but are going to recognize things in me that hopefully are going to elevate me to more approximate in the way I think and act. And I fail every day, right?
Sure.
And there's the beauty of the church right there. I mean, it's Christ who comes into our world, the one sacrifice of the Mass, and by partaking of him in theory, the Mass contains all that is necessary to become a saint. And so it's worthy of a question. Am I different this week? Hopefully we can go more regularly than once a week. But am I being changed? It's a great question to ask. Am I conforming? And if we're not, likely it's because of this. I will say this is an area in my article and others that I think are prominent and worth talking about. Is it because I'm a victim of the pandemic of subjective caprice? I'm a victim of this lie that truth is something I can determine instead of someone in whom I'm determined. That plays out for people who might go to liturgy or Mass or whatever based upon just what they feel. Well, that makes me feel this way, or I like the group, or I like the way Father's homily is, all of which, by the way, have their importance. But we can lose sight of, no, it's ultimately Christ's revelation to us, which requires a response or a rejection. There's the summary, I think, of the Catholic life. It's revelation, to which, and revelation in my wife, again, revelation in my neighbor, revelation with my money and resources. With revelation, I have two responses. Either I receive or I reject. That's I think, the shape of the all-defining worship. That liturgy in its, the Eucharistic liturgy forges us for if we're cooperating and participating rightly.
Amen. Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio, and the familiar voice of our guest today, Greg Schlueter, is with us, who's written a wonderful article, The Case for Reverence in an Age of Casualness, which we'll delve into a little deeper. But you bring up such great points there. It kind of begins with questioning, right? I mean, you got to ask the questions, and then with the guidance and help of the Holy Spirit, you're kind of led to what His will is for you in each situation. And that's the only way you can get deeper and more connected, I think.
100%.
So I think that's a very important thing to do. We just need to start asking ourselves, even in the mundane, everyday things, where does this fit into your plan for me, Lord?
Indeed, and there's those sharp moments, which I think every dad who cares has, good friends of mine, you guys, where you're engaging in your marriage and home. And let's face it, there are issues that surround us that are not consistent with the gospel.
Yeah.
And, as Bonhoeffer said, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. Not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act. Like we're meant to be active. The gospel today or yesterday, the harvest is, right, plenty. Laborers are few. So it's not even just the ordinary course of things, but do we have a heart of the Father for forging others to whom we are entrusted in the ways we respond to them? And that requires a different kind of magnanimity for the person who's maybe, difficult, struggling, looking through the lens of everything is negative, doesn't matter what happens. Well, it's there requires that spiritual insight of, am I engaging them just on the surface on these issues, or am I going deeper, informed by the likes of Bob Schutz, right, or Neil Lozano, and kind of asking the question, hurting people hurt people, what's broken underneath the surface? Invariably, this is what the liturgy is, the provision for that poverty. And I find, I'm going to be honest, like the ways in which historically maybe I find things tweak me. I mean, you got, whether it's social media, whatever, which I don't partake of. You guys know that. I'm just not on social media. I'm kidding. I'm very much on social media. And sometimes I've deleted things. I've responded. I'm just going to say I've apologized, at times. But what's my point? My point is all of us are blessed to recognize we are the patient in the hospital, not just to go in and have coffee and, agree with everything, but to recognize we are in some ways deeply wounded and in need of that grace, in need of that touch of the Master's hand through His suffering and sacrifice, blood and water poured out on the cross, in the liturgy. If we're aware of those broken spaces, I think life becomes an adventure.
Amen.
We don't just stick with the same wounds week after week. And we know this, how many brothers, sisters, friends don't talk to each other but they went to Mass. Maybe some of them don't go anymore because they regarded it as they were inoculated against his power, because the parents didn't say, do you realize how powerful this is? And initiated, I am sorry. Like, we could go into this, I talk at the Great Family Reset is a practice I've done in our home in short form. It's, I just want to hear you guys. I love you. I'm flawed as a father. I'm flawed as a husband. I want to apologize. And I want to hear from you the ways that I've hurt you. And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect from here, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to ask your prayers. And by the way, this isn't a one and done. To set the landscape for living the reverence, right? A Holy Communion received is revealed in the degree to which we live a holy community. So holy community is the flourishing, the fullness, the representation to the world, a dying world languishing and looking for an answer. A holy community, marriage and family at the core, but community reveals that, hey, where are you getting this? How can you be, so strong and stalwart when somebody's criticizing you or disagreeing with you? How can you show such peace? And how can you reach in to people who have, making decisions in their lives that are contrary to the faith and love them anyways? Where's that strength coming from? I mean, that's gospel living. That's reverence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what do you do? I mean, let's put the church off to the side based on, how your parish may be setting up an environment, for proper worship. What can you as an individual do to change it? Maybe the way you dress. You could come at this at so many different angles, but I think it needs to start somewhere, and it needs to start with the individual, because again, if you can't learn to submit to the church, how do you expect to learn to submit to God? And the church has certain expectations for us. I mean, there is this liturgy. How do we enter into this liturgy?
That's a great question, and it takes me to an interview I had last week from a priest in Texas, who began interviewing me about this article of asking me to share maybe a liturgy horror story. And I didn't have any really major big ones. There were some examples, but then he said, what are some really good ones? And I'm going to get to your question. Yeah. The good example, of which there are many, many ones, but Father Nathan Cromley at our marriage and family retreat maybe 7 years ago, it was a Novus Ordo, very reverently prayed. And I say that deliberately. My dad, who is such a gift, and maybe we can talk about is in this article and how important he's been to me. But like the language matters. It's not just said. I know that you say the Mass, you say the Rosary, you pray it. He'd emphasize that. Anyways, Father Nathan Cromley, if you walked into that Mass, you were an alien. You knew nothing about Christ, knew nothing about what he did in his sacrifice or the faith. By the demeanor, the decorum, the countenance, the intentionality with which he prayed the Mass, you knew he believes what he's saying. Like, he believes what he's saying. And again, I'm not speaking of performance. Any actor, to be continued.
You got 30 seconds to use up there. You're right. He is convicted. He knows what he believes, and he's not afraid to express it in ways that people can hear it. So I wish I could have heard that. I think that was a good one. Not a horror story, but the opposite.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. All right, a little bit of a break here on Faith with Reasons. We will return with Greg Schlueter when we come back.
Thinking about separation or divorce? Retrovi is a Christian peer ministry designed to help troubled couples regain the health of their marriage. It helps spouses reawaken the love, trust, and commitment that originally brought them together. Retrovi has helped tens of thousands of couples around the world. To learn more about Retrovi or to register for a weekend near you, call 1-800-470-2230 or visit us on the web at www.helpourmarriage.com.
Experience the incredible story of a woman who Time magazine named the most influential Catholic woman in the United States. Rita Rizzo, the future Mother Angelica, grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Canton, Ohio during the Great Depression. Rita's father abandoned the family before she was 5 years old. Her early years of trial were compounded by a debilitating illness until she was healed by Jesus through a woman named Rhoda Wise. That healing set her life on a course that would ultimately change the world. Learn the amazing story of Rita Rizzo at the Mother Angelica Museum in her hometown of Canton, Ohio. Go to www.motherangelicamuseum.com. be inspired. Plan your visit now at MotherAngelicaMuseum.com.
We invite you to join us each weekday at 3 p.m. here on Annunciation Radio for our Hour of Grace and Mercy. We begin first with the praying of the Divine Mercy Chaplet. Following that, we have Mass from Rosary Cathedral. This is an invitation to set some time apart in prayer and reflection with us, your friends here at Annunciation Radio, for this hour of grace and mercy. Share your prayer requests with us at chapletprayer@gmail.com.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shane Stanford with Ron Finn, and we are blessed to have in studio with us Greg Schlueter, who's an author, speaker, and movement leader, passionate about restoring faith, family, and culture, in addition to directing communication and marketing for the Institute of American Constitutional Thought and Leadership. He leads Image Trinity, which is ilovemyfamily.us. It's a dynamic marriage and family movement. Offers thought-provoking commentary for his blog, GregorianRant.us. Hosts the popular radio program heard right here in Annunciation Radio, Ignite Radio Live, alongside his wife, Stephanie, fostering meaningful conversations and inspire transformation. And of course, Ignite Radio Live can be heard every week here at 2 p.m. on Saturday and 8 p.m. on Sunday. Greg and Stephanie are blessed with 7 children, 1 in heaven, and a growing number of grandchildren. His recent books are The Magnificent Piglets of Pigletville, 12 Roses, and Slaying Giants. And today we have him in studio to talk about his Catholic Exchange article, most recent one written, The Case for Reverence in an Age of Casualness. And I asked a whopper of a question shortly before the end of our, and I do this from time to time, and Greg was giving a great answer, and we got cut off by the music, but we were just getting into this wonderful Mass that you witnessed with Father Cromley, and I'll let you just pick it up there.
No, thank you. You asked the question, how do we go about fostering, I'm going to kind of my own words, a culture of reverence?
Yeah.
And I will say, number one, the insight there is it's not just performative. Although, again, the William Most idea that I mentioned in the beginning, somatic resonance, to do what is right physically is important. As we see in the Old Testament, the New Testament, Christ in the garden, regardless of what you feel, there is a value of right, reverent expression in standing up, sitting down, kneeling. There's a heart of that, and it has a way of forming the interior. So that's very important. So what are those things? I think we all kind of know, but I'll say what rightly orders them is when we know those who are the leaders and preside over this, their love draws us into a depths of love. It's not much different from my wife, who could just say, I love you, and goes on with cooking, or like an eyeball to eyeball, I want to tell you, like, you mean so much to me, and I really love you. Those two examples maybe illustrate, in the latter example of sincerity, intentionality, and therein I think is some teaching. I do think it requires some teaching, and the core insight of all of this is that, our hearts, our attitudes, liturgy is meant to form us for right recognition of value, which is God's supreme value, and that value revealed in every circumstance, at work, at home, to see that value and to give it the right response. You might say the parents at 2 a.m., child is crying. It's not a matter of whether you like to get up or if it's, warm and fuzzy. It's not. You do it because, and by the way, when you do it, in spite of being exhausted and having, a difficult day the day before, and we've all experienced this, you do it and you're blessed by it.
Yeah.
Like you do it in every instance of the 2 o'clock child crying in the morning, spelled out in family life. It's tough precisely because God designed it beyond my pay grade, the difficulty, the challenges as occasions to forge us for the sacrifice that draws us into the Mass. This is my body broken. Those are the moments where we can literally participate in some deep, meaningful spiritual way in life. And the counterparts, what does Wormwood whisper? Wormwood whispers, just surround yourself with comfort. Surround yourself to minimize, curate your world, right? Isolate any music, any people, any circumstances. Live in the digital realm and isolate anything that's uncomfortable or difficult. Well, as Chesterton speaks of in his, compendium, Great New Family, great essays, family's a mess. And God allows it to be and designs it to be as an occasion for us to be forged for living Christ, who ushers us into the Trinity. So I think, again, fostering that mindset, the heart set, the teaching, and to be united in those gestures, more than performative, but they do have an effect, as I began in my response, in forming us for happiness, for joy, for delight, our true good.
Beautiful.
Greg Schlueter is our guest here on Faith with Reasons, and we're going to be talking here about the article in the Catholic Exchange, The Case for Reverence in an Age of Casualness, which is an excellent article, and it's really thought-provoking because it does kind of bring us back to, I guess, getting more connected and thinking about things in a more serious way. And really, when we are connected that way, we can grow spiritually, and that's our whole goal. We want to grow closer and closer. Now, you start off the article talking about your father, Bernie, who I've never had the pleasure to meet. But as far as taking things in a certain way and then kind of evolving them, I guess, a term that you called Bernieizing, right?
Indeed.
So tell us about him and about, obviously, his influence on you that brings to you where you are right now and as a father.
So my father is very much my hero. And we're all imperfect. He certainly was, but his passion for God and his faith, his Catholic faith, he's very Germanic, so it wasn't always expressive. I'd say his EQ early on wasn't, ranking really high as a father. But what's intriguing is in that, kind of very Germanic stoical experience in our earliest childhood, we experienced in our home what most people thought was just what the Baptists or evangelical or fundamentalists did up the street, that was to gather and pray from the heart. Mm-hmm. So he very much was a man of integrity and didn't want to be just saying words. He was conscious of the fact that if we're saying things to people or praying, do we mean it? Like, is it intentional? And I would say at times, even in recent history, as we're all forged in life, when he would pray the divine office, okay, so we as a family were accustomed to praying the divine office. If we do it with him, it becomes quite an event because he'll stop in between the stanzas. He'll give a little homily and an expression, which, by the way, most people would say, and maybe rightly recognize, he's moved by this, right? He's not just going through the motions. Like, I was forged by that interiorly. And so I'm acknowledging that value that many Catholics, by the way, could maybe recover of that intentional intimacy, the gnosko factor, that Matthew 7:21, that conjugal connection to God. By the way, the Psalms originated from that experience. David, principally, right? It wasn't like these words descended and he just coldly said them and put them on paper. These derive from his gut.
His emotions.
Yeah, from his heart experience.
Out,
Psalm 51, Slaying Giants, my book, talks about his falling with Bathsheba and then sending Uriah to his death. I mean, that call in that psalm alone is an example. He's expressing or asking for repentance, leading to restoration, leading to him called to be a rescuer, a term we kind of borrow from Father Ricardo, who writes the foreword of our book. But I say this to make the point, in the very origin and heart of all prayer is, and Pope Benedict articulates this so beautifully in his trilogy, relationship at the heart of ritual, relationship at the heart of religion. All that to say, one can go too far and dismiss appropriate liturgical right responses that are efficacious, which means they accomplish their own good. In my theology, it's either ex opere operantis or operans. I forget which one is which, but by the act. We'd hear, even if a priest is an axe murderer, whichever those terms is, doesn't matter. By the act in itself, it is powerful. It doesn't matter about his subjective disposition or those sorts of things. So the church, we've lost, in a sense, a culture of decorum. We see it around us. Maybe it's even going into McDonald's. Tell me, and we're old enough that we can think back to 25 years ago, the stories of just a lack of, self-presence, of the way people dress. When you set a time to gather, like 7 o'clock has suddenly become, if I feel like it, I'm going to say I'm coming, but if I feel like it or something better comes up, I don't come. It's manifest that way. Yeah. Or maybe I'll show up, 15, 20 minutes late. Who cares? Even if you spent money on this event. You guys know this from organizing events with your large, wonderful, benefaction events and dinners. People sign up and register and money's paid out for them. And so that's just an example which reveals a kind of being forged for right response again to value, this von Hildebrand, articulation of the faith life. So my dad, when he is this is, so I affirm all that I just said about that intentionality. But in the divine office, it's an objective prayer of the church. Priests are obliged, religious are obliged to pray it. They're not even obliged to pray the Mass every day, by the way. They're obliged to pray the divine office. So, Dad, I love you. Private prayer, you do that all you want. In fact, thank you for the witness of making it personal when you're praying your divine office or something. But when we're doing it together, understand there's nothing lost by us collectively just following this rhythm and flow without adding to it or subtracting, and knowing there's a quality here that's beyond our understanding, beyond our capacity to understand, of just bowing to our praying together the words in its right form that is efficacious, that God is working with us in that. And I'm kind of throwing a lot at you. I'm kind of fire hosing. But the idea that insight of I bow to a truth revealed to me, regardless of what I feel, is kind of an architecture of the soul towards God that is fundamental. And I would argue that, really that's sort of an Old Testament thing, but it's essential. Obedience, the beginning of faith is fear. Fear is the beginning of faith, right? I think there's that sensibility of we respond whether we feel it or like it or not. That's the foundation for which the Holy Spirit illuminates us, that we're staying down the road between the berms. I can't create those berms. I can't presume they're not there. I observe them whether I like it or not, whether I agree or not, I do that. And with that realm is where the Holy Spirit operates, almost like a river, right? There's the banks of the river that line it, that I can't change. They don't shape it. I'm not going to say, well, I'd rather do this or that. I'm observing the sure walls of that river through which these streams are flowing. And in there is where the grace of that Holy Spirit moves, and we can find real transformation.
Well, this is why I think your article is, as far as I'm concerned, really well written, because you set this up. You give your father as an example. Obviously, again, a very faith-driven man, taking opportunities to bring in essentially private prayer into something that should be public prayer. But this is how you structure your article. The next thing you discuss is what reverence really is and why it matters. We discussed a lot of that in the first half of the show. But then the forgotten difference between public prayer and private prayer, and this I guess getting back to the whole reverence thing, it is our reverence in these. You just said, the divine office. It's our reverence to participate in as it's written. There's a format to this, and we should follow that out of reverence because it has a most basic purpose. We need to be following that purpose. But then again, if it is considered a public prayer, even if we're during the Mass, it is something that, like the divine office, is being said, every minute of every hour across the world. I mean, it's being prayed continuously. So it is a form of public prayer. We shouldn't take this opportunity to make it a part of a private prayer for ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's contrary, maybe it feels wrong that you're saying that, right? Like we should make it personal, but in public space, and by the way, do it if it's just you. But in public space, here's also what it does, and I talk about this in the article, is people are languishing for absence of real, deep, meaningful human connection. They're languishing, they've got all the modes of communicate, with union, commune, we see that in that word, but there's no communion happening with all of the digital world. And why is that? Because there's sort of like a curated, I can now choose. It's not like the 1990s or 80s when we're all listening to the same station.
Yeah.
Even if the song wasn't the greatest song, only the good die young, Billy Joel, Pray from Great Guy. A lot of good in there, by the way, but songs that maybe we could know the jingle to, and if we knew as well as Scripture as well as we knew some of these songs, we'd be saints, right? But the point is this, though, there was a good in the fact that there were defining occasions for us to be united culturally and brought us together. And liturgy has the purpose of doing that. When we're praying these words together, we're doing just that. We're praying the words together. When we're in Mass and we're responding to the movements of the Mass, we're doing it together. Literally, there's a chorus. Like, you might even imagine, what if you're in a choral group and somebody decides they're going to start, singing Stairway to Heaven. They don't care if, or go off on their own.
Do a solo.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if worship, to give worth again, is we read and understand from the saints, is going to be the nature of life through all eternity, we need to discover that that's going to require a sense of bowing to the current modern thesis of I'm not going to do it if I don't want to, if it's not my timing, if it's not comfortable. You got to learn, and parents need to form their children to do things, whether they're good at it, like it or not, because not only is that life, there's a forging quality there. There's a grace that awaits us if we do it. I can think of numerous examples where my kids, when they're children, were rebelling against, I'm not going to do this, not going to do that, I don't want to do this. And they had to, because we're the parents. Every time I'm going to say this, when it was a good and right thing, which I think most of the time it was, afterwards, they experienced that. They may have told us, they may not have told us, but you knew there was a right ordering quality there that united them, whether it was a soccer team or a music group or something. You know, the world is a symphony by God's design. And I think the question is, how do we find our place and enter into that? And invariably, yes, there's a creative quality about it, but with regard to liturgy, at the core of it is I'm conforming to something Christ revealed. I'm responding. You see, again and again, you see this in the gospel, right? These are the chosen children of Israel who are observant, and you have the lawyer the other day, is this coming week? Anyways, always the lawyers Christ is speaking to, the legalistic, they got it right, but in their heart of hearts, there's a lack of symphony, there's a lack of conformity in their hearts to Christ, and that's what he's calling them to do.
Greg Schlueter on Faith with Reasons. Of course, you kind of touched on belonging and the importance of it and the relevance of it, but you kind of need that relevance in order to belong, and finding your place in each situation. And you do talk about that in the article a little bit. Maybe you can expound on that a little.
Well, I think we're in a mission where, quite frankly, came out of my awareness of my own need by God's design to be in community. And so it's to provide. In fact, often when we have our events or series, I will say this is kind of a selfish thing. Why? Because I want to be around men or women or couples that genuinely see that we have a poverty and are willing to explore not just surface, going to mass or not performing, but in our depths, areas, things that don't work. Like, let's be honest, like that's the heart of any really good community. Is it's kind of paradoxical, right? It's like good community begins with, can we be real and acknowledge the brokenness and things that have been said and done and family of origin? Christ transforms all of that when we come together, and there's an appropriate place to open that door with the recognition that in that poverty is Christ's provision. The liturgy is the essence of that. That's where the Source and Summit makes sense. And quite frankly, I'll say that's where the word belonging, I think, comes into play. We desire to belong to the body of Christ. And Steph, if she were here, she can wax more eloquent and beautiful about our lives, certainly of people that we've met that were really unlikely, like literally met downtown, different places and invited to our home and have come. And now, weeks, months, years later, are involved with the things that we do. Some have even become leaders. Since we've been at Cathedral, have met some people, one who was just entering the church. We happened to sit at a table with him after Mass. It was a nice communal gathering at the Cathedral. And Steph, this may be the third time we've been to this church, right? Meaning his parishioners. And she invited him to sit with us. We didn't know who he was, but we're doing the inviting. He's sitting at the table. Well, we learn in great detail his background. He was going to enter the church. He has since entered the church. Very broken background, tears in his eyes. And in summary form, he experienced all the woke world had to offer. He was broken because of it, and he couldn't help but have tears and saying, I'm becoming Catholic because look at the world. It's the only answer. It's the only response. And he was sitting in the back of church. We said, sit with us. So often he'll come and sit with us. We've invited him to our house. Here's the thing. That deep yearning for that invitation wasn't primarily, it may have been, we see you don't really feel a sense of belonging to people. You're going to Mass, but belonging to a people here. I felt a desire to belong to his wisdom. Like I wanted to connect with the purity and the wisdom. In fact, during Mass, he would lean over sometimes to Steph during the prayers of the faithful. One of the prayers was, and we pray for all those about to enter church. This guy in his 50s, he's so moved, he starts crying in Mass as he hears that petition, and he just whispers to Steph, nobody's ever prayed for me before. Wow. He was that one entering the church. When is the last time we've taken seriously the living, present, self-sacrificing Creator, God in Jesus Christ, speaking to us personally and responding to us the way he did? Yeah. Like that gift, that 10 seconds radically deepened me or awakened me again to, am I looking at the world in the true value, not just performatively, but as a full human being? As Frank Sheed says, and I quote him in our book, Theology, not Theology Insanity, Theology Insanity, to see the world sanely is to see it God-bathed. To see the world sanely is to see it God-bathed, every part of it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that in your article, God-bathed. Yeah.
Love that term.
And I think it's where ultimately we're going. I mean, even these basics that we get out of proper reverence, and you say even reverence in even the smallest things, if we live our life and we practice our life this way, as you mentioned in the first half of the program, which I thought was beautiful, that we're actually being reverent, and that's how we live our lives. So it's going to encourage us to be more Christ-like. And that's really what reverence is. I mean, so it's driving us in our daily lives. We bring this from the Mass, very basic things that we can begin to change the way we act and the way we interact with people each and every day. I just there's so much to be gleaned from this, and again, this is the reason why I read it several times, because I just think it's amazing. Once again, for those that don't know, the case for reverence in the age of casualness. This is an article be found by Greg Schlueter at Catholic Exchange, and I encourage our listeners to go out and to read this, because it even here, I mean, why we need reverence to belong, and we touched on what we were just talking about.
The truths of this are even punctuated in secular sociology and psychology. I touch on that in the article, but there's a great book by Sebastian Junger that I refer to called Tribe. He's not a believer. He's not a Christian. I've been blessed to interact with him just about his book, but the thesis that in his research of many moments throughout human history, one was in the pioneer days when, we were held, Indians kind of raided villages and killed the men and took the women. Years later, right, as we became, shall we say, more civilized, they came back from the East Coast to try to find their family members. And the women who were, shall we say, abducted and children didn't want to leave the tribe. In spite of the duress, the sacrifice, the struggle, because their tribes fostered contexts of belonging and participation. They experienced, dare I say, a kind of communal Eucharistic connection, living where they mattered, where they belonged, where they were counted upon. He also shares the story of World War II, did a study of kind of the mental health of those who were in cities that were bombed versus those that were not. And those who were in cities that were bombed were much better off psychologically and emotionally. So it really, kind of punctuates, again, the Paschal mystery, life, death, resurrection. It's transformative. Like every story ever told, right? The hero myth we see in every story ever told, every biography ever told. They begin somewhere. Any story, any movie, think of your favorite one, whether it's Gladiator or Star Wars or whatever. They begin somewhere, they go through a crucible, they come out on the other end more fully knowing their identity, which sets them on mission. Now, whether you're a, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, you're going to get this idea. Let's give words to this. The first movement is life. The second movement, they go through the crucible, death. They come out on the other end, resurrection, and it informs the mission. Pentecost. What does that sound like? Like this is the DNA of human existence. This is the DNA, and liturgy is meant to forge us. And again, sociology is going to reveal the degree to which we're living healthily, the degree to which we are at peace and in good relationship with others is the degree to which we've cultivated this quality of bowing down to the truth, to him who is the supreme value, and liturgy forges us for that.
Beautiful.
And it's listening with the heart, not just with the head. You're not making the decisions. You're trying to find out what the decisions should be. And that's a huge difference in, when you change your perspective like that, especially when you draw on others like-minded or even not like-minded, you get that sense of belonging that you're all moving in the same direction, and you're drawing from each other too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the message here to anybody who's listening, we all have our own challenges, struggles. God sees us in them, and he allows them to happen so that he himself can be the provision. And the Mass is meant to forge us to have not just, to receive the grace of the sacraments, which is the source and summit. I keep saying it again, maybe more to myself than anybody. But Lord, please forge my mind and my heart to look at the world this way, to look at the deficiencies, the brokenness in marriages, families, the things around me. Like you reach in there, the footprints in the sand, maybe people dismiss as a cliche, but it remains powerful and punctual that God took on flesh. The Logos became sarx. And it's not just, we lose that if we're presuming to offer people whatever they want, whenever they want, subjective caprice. If there's not an invitation to bow, to bend, to be rightly ordered towards something beyond us. And I think that takes courage for parents in every area. Mm-hmm. In organizing time, like we've for 12 years, we offer this Live It gathering guide based upon the subsequent Sunday readings. If you parents do a tally of how much discretionary time they have after work, after school, eating, sleeping, got it all, and how they spend their discretionary time, and then ask the question, to what effect, to what end? Mm-hmm. Invariably, it's not bringing them closer to the kingdom. I'm not saying it's bad or evil or wrong, but invariably they've created digital silos, and they allow them to exist. Yeah. So what if just this week you went to ilovemyfamily.us and circled the family up? First of all, as I say that, I know that's a struggle, but here's an example. It's a small, practical way to invite our family to bow so that we can experience the deluge of grace, the blood and water of Christ that is healing, that's transforming, that's reviving. And by the way, it's going to be different. It's going to be contrary, as I shared the story of coming to Mass and hands open to folding them and, on my tongue versus, on my hand. I had to change. This will require maybe parents to bow and say, 30 discretionary hours, maybe we can spend 45 minutes. Maybe we'll try to bring our family together and do this. And I guarantee it will be a powerful experience. Now,
we only have a couple minutes left, but you conclude this article by saying reverence as resistance. And it's such a beautiful thing. I'll quote here: "I will not live by impulse. I will not worship what flatters me. I will not reduce love to a feeling or worship to a show." Wow. Getting back to what you just said, and I think this is a great segue right to this last part of your article. I will bow. I will wait. I will learn to love the form before I feel the fire. Beautiful. I mean, it's tying all of this together, and it really is about changing us. We have to begin with ourselves, and we do this through whatever form of reverence and practicing our everyday life. And this is how we're going to change. We change ourselves. We change others.
Indeed.
All right. So how can people see your article?
Well, they have to Catholic Exchange Greg Schlueter.
That's it. Oh, that's simple as that.
Look up a bunch. There we go.
Now, do you have your article linked on your websites?
It's probably just best to go to Catholic Exchange.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to go to ilovemyfamily.us.
Yes.
Thank you.
And, of course, massimpact.us.
Yep. Slanggiants.us.
Yeah.
Let me throw that in there. Great Father Ricardo, great bishops, people on board. Excited about getting that launched.
Absolutely. And tell you what, that's going very well, as most of your endeavors do.
Thank you.
Because they are, again, oriented the right way, and they're originating from the right impulses. So we thank you for that gift of yours.
Thank you guys for all that you do, and all of our listeners, of course. Blessed to be on the team.
Don't miss Ignite Radio Live this weekend here on Annunciation Radio. Greg Schlueter, a pleasure to have you on.